Nice to have you with us on this Tuesday afternoon. Hi, everybody. Yours truly. Nice to have you aboard on the kickoff today here on Mad Dog Unleashed with the great Colin Russo and Colin Schmeling and Eddie Erickson. Yours truly, Christopher Russo, is on board for you as we chat. 888 Mad Dog 6. Lots to do today. Steve Lapis included. We get him on a little later on about the NCAA, the games last night, the 8 not great ones, the one good game with Michigan and LSU. Steve actually had that game. We'll have some little tournament time with him a little later today. We'll go through a little potpourri at the top of the hour at 5 today, too. We look forward to that. The podcast is out, by the way, the UCLA segment, the episode 3. The podcast, the NCAA, you've heard the first 2. Episode 4 is tomorrow. That's on the 70s. But episode 3 is out. That is all on UCLA. And a big feature there is Gail Goodrich, who's on that with Kareem and with Walton and with Shackelford and with Wilkes. So you'll enjoy that. That's an hour and 12 minutes. So you'll enjoy that there, episode 3. Now, speaking of the aforementioned Mr. Goodrich, the passing yesterday of Elgin Baylor, we did not really get a chance to delve into too much, and we want to make sure we give Elgin his due on this Tuesday, and we will do that with Gail right now. Played with him and played for him and grew up on Southern Cal, grew up watching him in the whole 9 yards. And Goodrich says hello. Gail, welcome. Nice to chat. How you doing today, pal? Okay?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, Chris. Thank you very much for, reaching out to me. Yesterday, of course, was a very, very difficult day. Elgin was a very good friend. I played with him, had a basketball camp with him. And he obviously coached me as well. So it's a big loss for basketball, a big loss for me, because he was truly one of the great ones.
Wow, emotional, Gail. I knew that you loved him. I didn't know that close. Let's talk growing up in L.A. You grew up there, and the Lakers did not get to town until 1960. So you're old enough to have a little feel. Give the audience a little sense of how significant it was when the Lakers got to Southern California in the fall of 1960. Go ahead.
Well, the Lakers came, like you said, in 1960 to Los Angeles, and that was really the expansion of professional basketball to the West Coast. It was the beginning of what now today is, of course, a global game, but before that, the farthest team west was St. Louis, and of course in Minneapolis, where the Lakers were. So, when Elgin came to Los Angeles, he really introduced professional basketball, and it was Elgin and the sportscaster Chick Hearn who really sold professional basketball in Los Angeles. I was a junior at the time in high school. I did get to meet Elgin my senior year at a luncheon. And, he was bigger than life. I can remember on Sunday mornings, every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, when they were playing in Minneapolis, and at that time it was the NBA game of the week, and it was generally the Lakers or Boston or both having a televised game. So, I saw Elgin early in his career, and he was, he was sensational. Today everybody looks at Larry Bird, Julius Erving, and a number of others in terms of the great skills and the ability to play the game. But Elgin was really before basically television on the NBA game, and he was certainly he was tremendous. There are no better there even today that or better than Elgin at the forward spot, and he was just an incredible player.
How about some of those games early in his career? November of '59, 71 against the Knicks, and then November of '60, He had 60-something against the Celtics in a regular season game. And then he has the 61 or so in a postseason against Boston, which Jordan broke. You remember those 3 games in particular, Gail, at all, or no?
Well, I don't remember exactly those games. I know those are great games that he had. But he's scoring those kind of points when, 20 points was a big night for most people. The game was not as quick. It's not as fast. It's changed tremendously. So those numbers are staggering. I do remember, though, the year that he went into the Army, and they got permission for him to get weekend passes so that he could play, he would not practice with the team. He would show up on weekends like you would a pickup game at the YMCA, only he averaged 38 points and 16 rebounds or 18 rebounds that year. I mean, it was incredible.
61. Yeah, 61-62. Gail's 100%. He played in 48 games. He averaged 38-3 and 18-6 on the boards. And that is the year he had the 61 against the Celtics in the postseason. So you're telling me he only played on weekends that year, Gail?
He only played on weekends. He would fly in to wherever the game was. He played only on weekends. It was incredible. I played with Elgin at the end of his career after having knee surgery. He was sort of, in a sense, a shadow of himself, but he was still better than everybody else. He was incredibly strong at 6'5". Players just bounced off. And he was very, very quick. Basketball is a game of quickness. And if you look at all the teams today, you look at your NCAA, you look at the pros, teams that are generally quicker and, of course, move the ball and play the game the right way. But those teams are generally your winners. And he was quicker than everybody else at the forward position. Those days, the forwards were 6'7", 6'8", maybe 6'9", but no one could guard him. I mean, he was just quicker. He had a quick release, quick first step. And I can recall times when he would take the ball off the defensive board and dribble the length of the court, and he beat everybody down. So, I mean, he was just an incredible athlete and really a nice guy, very unselfish, he's going to be missed.
We're going to get to your career playing for him and as a GM. His first year in L.A., 35 and 20 rebounds a game. Now, West did not come. West came off the bench a lot in that first year, right, Gail? So, though West was a great West Virginia player and played in the Olympics and everything else, when he got to L.A., he did not start right away. Do I have that read right? Isn't that correct?
That is correct. He was a rookie. And Fred Schaus, who was his college coach, really wanted to bring him along slowly. And he did for about a half a season. And then, he then moved him in the starting lineup. And, of course, that's history. But that first year was really Elgin. It was Elgin's team. And, of course, later became, Baylor and West and Baylor. But he really, put Los Angeles on the map for professional basketball.
All right, how about the knee injury? When did that happen? That happened in the mid-'60s. I mean, I don't have a year here where he missed the whole season. So he got through it. If he had this terrible injury, Gail, everybody knows about this injury, which really took away a lot of his quickness. When did that occur?
I don't recall exactly when it happened. But it did happen. in the mid-'60s. I think it was really in the early '60s, if I'm not mistaken, before I got there, or right about the time. And of course, '65 was my first year. But maybe he had it in '66 or '7. I'm not sure. But he played with pain. And of course, all players at that era. I mean, we played with pain, injuries, and not the best idea sometimes, but as the medical profession has, and with a lot of trainers, and that has improved over the years for players. But he used to we had a hydroculator with moist heat, and he used to have to put that on his knees before the game, and of course then ice afterwards. But as a rookie, the rookies, we carried the balls because we had to, the team had to have their own balls for warm up and that, and all the medical equipment. And that hydroculator was very, very heavy. And so I used to have to carry the hydroculator for him. But yeah, he played with sore knees for a good part of his career.
Knee problems started in '63, '64, major injury there in the playoffs in '65. Only averaged 16 and a half a game. So there you go with the timeline. I know it destroyed West, never beating the Celtics. Did it bother Elgin as much or no?
Well, Elgin was a tremendous competitor. He hated to lose. So, I never had a conversation about that, but with him, but I'm sure it did. All athletes are very, very competitive, but Elgin is one of the more competitive ones. There's no question about that. You don't play cards with Elgin. Elgin was a great card player. Played gin. He took a good part of it. Chick Hearn's money. We played, and then They played, which I didn't play because I don't gamble, but they played poker, and they had to stop the game because Elgin and Jerry were taking the other players per diem by playing poker. So then they forbidded the game of poker.
Wow! So wouldn't allow him to play poker because Elgin was so good at the poker. Now I know he and Wilt never got along. They were scoring compatriots for a long time. Wilt shows up, and for whatever the reason, the way they played the game. You've told me these stories many a time. But the Wilt Elgin Baylor scenario never worked out. Now, listen, when Elgin got it worked out, but as far as winning a championship is concerned, they almost played too much the same game. Tell us about that for a sec. Go ahead.
Well, they got along. I wouldn't say they didn't get along. But their style of play and the way the Lakers were playing at that time, they weren't complementary. Elgin liked to come down and he was most effective and loved the left-hand corner of the court. So he always went to the left-hand court. And Will, he liked the left-hand side of the court in the post. And in those days, so now you had two great players in a confined area, basically, because we didn't spread the court like they do now. If we could spread the court, Elgin would have been incredible because no one could guard him one-on-one. But so, Elgin, liked to penetrate, take his man on the drive, and as he would do that, Wilt standing there in the post. So, unfortunately, their style of play really didn't complement one another. So there was some friction in there, yes. But you had two great players. I think they went to the finals. Unfortunately, they lost to Boston.
That's the year you were. That's the year you were in Phoenix. That's right.
Yes, that's right. I was in Phoenix, and So, then I came back the next year. And then at that time, Elgin, in terms of when Sharman came and coached, and Elgin retired after, I think, 6 or 8 games, he was at a point where I don't think that he felt that he could have the same kind of results that he expected of himself. And that pretty much is true with any player when it's time to retire. I know I did at that time, where I just did not expect, because my body wasn't going to give me the kind of results that I expected or experienced in the past. And so that's the time in, I think, 71.
And right, and that's what
Elgin
and
retired.
And then Jimmy Mack, and then you go out there and you win the 33 in a row. Here's Gail Goodrich, of course. Great time with us. You played for him, with the Jazz. How was he to play for? Now, that was not a great Jazz team. That one team was good before a pistol ripped up his knee. I think he coached that team, and you told me about that team many a time. But how about playing for Elgin when he's a head coach down in New Orleans? Give me some thoughts on that.
Well, Elgin, of course, he was such a great person. He was a great coach to play for. Unfortunately, we were not very good. We didn't have the skills to consistently compete in the league. And, of course, we finished down at the bottom. But he was a player's coach. He had a lot of experience as a player. And he really respected players' thoughts. Some coaches are real disciplinarians. Elgin was not a disciplinarian. Maybe he should have been, but we were just not a very good team. But it was not Elgin's fault.
Was not Elgin's fault. All right, how about, he was a GM of that Clipper team for a long time with Sterling, and he was not treated right by Sterling, but he stayed at it, and he stayed with L.A. What was the reason? Why didn't he just walk away, Gail? Why did he stick and deal with that nonsense from his general manager?
Well, I don't know the real reasons. I can only speculate. I think Donald Sterling would. Well, I had interviews with Donald Sterling, but I think, and I concluded, he would not have been a good. Or let's put it this way: he would have been a difficult person to work for. That's not to say that Donald Sterling was not successful in his life, in his business ventures, but he meddled, and I think this is pretty well known that he meddled with the operations of the team. Donald Sterling is not a basketball guy. And I think in many cases, Elgin had his hands tied behind his back in terms of what he wanted to do in the direction of the team, et cetera. And, Donald Sterling thought he could, and he owned the team, so I guess he could pick and choose or do things he wanted to do, which I'm sure were contrary to what Elgin wanted to do. Why did someone stay? I don't know. Elgin was very passionate about the game. He loved the game. And maybe he was just continually hoping that someday that Donald Sterling would step aside and let Elgin do some things that he felt that were necessary to build a championship team with the Clippers, but that never happened.
Never happened. Weston, him and West. West loves him, huh? Tell us about that, Gail, quickly.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was West and Baylor, West loved him because he was a great individual. They were close. They were great teammates. They learned to play together, they did things together off the court. They both had a great deal of respect for their ability, for each other's ability, and also for as friends.
Going to give you 2 quotes to end, both from Celtics. Here's Tommy Heinsohn, the late Heinsohn. Elgin Baylor as a forward beats out Bird, Irving, and everybody else. Heinsohn said, he told a biographer, referring to Larry Bird and obviously Julius Irving. He had the total game, defense, offense, everything. Rebounding, passing the ball. Here's Sharman, coached and played with him. Elgin Baylor is the greatest corner man who ever played pro basketball. How about that?
Cannot argue with those statements. They played against him. Sharman coached him for a short period of time. Heinsohn played against him. He could never guard Elgin. And as good as Heinsohn was, Elgin was just better. So I do believe in those statements. And in my opinion, they're true.
Gail, great job. You've been on with us twice now. You did a great job at the podcast, which everybody is getting a kick out of with the NCAA. You're a big part of that, too. Stay healthy. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Always appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Anytime. All right.
Anytime with Gail Goodrich on Elgin Baylor. We'll take a time out. We continue. We're on Mad Dog Unleashed.